Hello, hello, hello. 212, 212, mic check. Rick, can you hear me?
Hey, yes.
Loud and clear.
Great. All right. Hey, so hello, Crow fam. Thanks everyone for joining us here today. We're excited to kick off this first workshop of the PayTech Hackathon. And as you may know, there is a 42,000 prize pool up for grabs at the hackathon. But for today, we'll dive into the x402 and integrating with Cronos EVM. And to be honest, there's no one better to do this than our very own Rick, who is a blockchain innovation engineering lead at Cronos. Now, before we start today, there is a Q&A section at the end of this workshop. You can drop your questions in the chat, and we'll try and sift through them at the end of the session and answer as many as we can in the time that we have today. By the way, if you still have questions after the workshop, we will drop the Telegram group, the link where you can join. That is specifically for anyone interested or registered for the hackathon, where we're more than happy to help you out some more. We'll also drop all of the resources. So if you weren't able to catch this, you'll be able to rewatch it later. We'll also have a bunch of other resources, case studies and stuff that Rick will present today and that we'll share later. Now, that being said, I think it's time for you, Rick, to take the stage. So take it away.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm very excited today to kick this off. So why don't we just get started? Let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. All right. So the very title of today's workshop is essentially the introduction to x402 PayTech, which is basically the motto of our hackathon, and how to integrate it with the Cronos EVM ecosystem. In reality, this workshop is more so an introduction to x402, to our tooling, to the resources that we have currently available, and also the stuff that we're currently building and the stuff that's currently on the roadmap. Things are changing obviously very quick, and we listen to feedback, and we try obviously to pick up as many of suggestions and feedback that we receive, and then we prioritize it based on business sense and pain, and obviously also the fact whether the feedback presents low hanging fruits that we can quickly implement, or whether they are more complex integrations. But yeah, that aside, let me show you the agenda for the workshop today. So what we have outlined here is, we start off with a quick overview of x402. Most of you might know it already from Base and from the Solana hackathon. We will also look into our vision and where we stand in relation to x402. Then secondly, we will have a look at the architecture around x402 and obviously also the ecosystem that we are currently building around the whole concept of x402. I think what is going to be quite important and probably very relevant for you is also to deep dive and have a look at our current use case tracks. There's a few of them that we have outlined here in the workshop. Now, I want to mention this does not mean that you will have to build around those tracks. It just means that we have, currently a certain focus around these tracks. Meaning that if you come up with a pain, or if you identify a pain that is current and that is actually quite relevant to solve, even if it's not part of the tracks, by all means, we will always welcome submissions, and we will also always take those into consideration. And sometimes, there's no better way than doing a hackathon to identify underlying pains and opportunities. So yeah. All right. So The four tracks that we currently have in mind are, the first one, the main track is very much around the generic x402 application implementation, also around the AI agent SDKs. The second is more around the finance and automations sector. We look at the agentic finance, and, agentic automations in the context of finance. And then thirdly, we have obviously the crypto.com and Cronos integration track, which is definitely relevant because we do want to extend x402 into the existing crypto.com and Cronos ecosystem. So no better way than creating a use case track around it. And then finally, I know a lot of you were suggesting ideas around resources, potentially new facilitators and additional plugins and utilities. So that's where our fourth track is basically going to focus on. So the fourth track is dev tooling and anything that extends existing resources and utils, but also creating new ones definitely. Then we will follow into the current Cronos EVM integration ecosystem. You might know this already, but I'm going to mention it anyways. We will have a quick look at the network setup, the current setup on testnet and mainnet, but also spend some time on our SDKs. We do mention Python and JavaScript here. Just on a side note, right now we only have a TypeScript npm package for the facilitator. But if we see that there is demand for Python and other programming languages, we can actually pretty much release other libraries as well. So we have our scaffold. So whenever we build other SDK libraries, we will follow that scaffold to make sure that it is consistent. So yeah, it would be really nice from you to hear as well. What kind of frameworks you work on, and whether you would be interested in Python SDKs or whether the npm package is sufficient for you right now. Then I also created an end-to-end workflow demo that I wanted to walk you through today, and also share the repositories with you so that you can, clone it, get started, and experiment it yourself. I think no better way to doing tutorial end-to-end demos and share it with the community. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that as well. And finally, really just before getting into Q&A, a slide on our current roadmap and resources, and some ideas on how to implement those. Okay. All right. Let's start with the very beginning. What is x402? I don't know if you are aware, but the status code 402 exists since before. It is essentially a status code that implies that the payment is required. The traditional API status codes. And so what happened recently is that the wider blockchain open source ecosystem, specifically around Solana and Base, identified an opportunity here, and we started building on, creating a new standard because what actually is happening is that some of the newer contracts, specifically on USDC, that were deployed by Circle, implement an EIP interface called 3009, and what it does is basically authorizes a transfer, and so a user can essentially use a facilitator to automate the transfer process. So if someone wants to settle a payment, they can do so via a facilitator. Not necessarily just a facilitator, there's other ways as well, but I think the facilitator makes that step much easier. And so yeah, that's that's where everything started. So it's essentially a payment and automation standard that can enable a agent and systems in general to basically execute secure on-chain financial actions. It was designed with interoperability in mind, so that applications from different chains and payment networks could potentially start to communicate with each other. If you're familiar with the agent-to-agent framework, you know that agents are becoming discoverable, and so do resources. And if some merchant wants to create a resource that is searchable by agents and other systems, they can do so by implementing the x402 schema and with a certain level of middleware, which we will see in the demo, by the way. They can then make um, verification and settlement happen. So yeah, it's quite exciting. It's still very early, so a lot of changes are being implemented. But I think it's very important for us and for anyone to follow the the standard that is trying to be um, created here. So I know that there's going to be thousands of different ideas, but as long as we will have a solid standard and a solid framework that everyone can follow, I think that will open a lot of opportunities. Um, Workflow-wise, it enables programmable workflows such as procuring payments, conditional transfers, and things like multi-step financial automations, or as I mentioned before, like also AI-driven transaction decision making. So that is it in a nutshell. I'm not going too deep into it. There's a lot of docs on what x402 is, but I think most of you by now are already aware of what it is and how it works. So our vision of x402 PayTech is really to make blockchain payment flows, as easy as modern fintech APIs. Think about Stripe. I mean, that's subjective, but I think Stripe has a lot of potential, and it has become a standard in many companies in relation to payment flows and automating payment intents. And so I think that's where we want to be. Um, we want to make blockchain payment flows as easy as modern fintech APIs. Secondly, we want to enable trust minimized agentic finance. So what that means is we want to be able to create an ecosystem where agents can, take certain actions and interact with other agents, with other resources, and generate a trust score, so to speak, and make it much more native and much more straightforward than it currently is. And I think x402 can help us to achieve that. Thirdly, we aim to provide scalable rails across Cronos and obviously also the Crypto.com ecosystem. So there's a lot of tools in the Cronos and Crypto.com ecosystem, and I think with the advent of x402, we can finally create additional rails across the existing resources, the existing ecosystem, and build on top of it. And then finally, offer tooling for both devs and AI agents. So I think we're getting into an era where AI agents will start to be much more autonomous, and so creating the ecosystem or marketplace, so to speak, will make it much more straightforward. The objective of the workshop itself is so what I think everyone should take away from this workshop is to get a sense of for those who didn't still understand x402, get a sense of the whole x402 model and the concept and the workflows around it, but also learn how to potentially integrate it with the Cronos EVM ecosystem. And then, explore things like the x402 facilitator, some of the SDKs and some of the resources that are currently available for builders. And then finally, know where to find relevant information, relevant documentation, relevant examples, faucet, and obviously also support. A lot is being released this week already, so I think every week there's going to be a little bit more that we will be able to provide to the community. Okay, now looking at the x402 ecosystem architecture, there is a few different layers or different components really. So the one here at the top is the x402 facilitator, which is basically a unified API that is used to create and manage, payment workflows. So basically, everything on verifying a payment to settling a payment. Then we do have AI agents. So this is basically where the decision logic would be living. Just used to, you can use deterministic examples or non-deterministic examples. It's up to you. I think there's a lot of heuristic agents that don't use any LLM at all, and then you will have some examples where you need some chain of thought, some reasoning, and we leave that up to the developers to decide. So every use case is different, and as a result, it requires a different approach. Thirdly, we have the execution layer. So that's basically where the transaction execution happens, and that's something that happens obviously on the transaction layer. And then we have assets that we currently support. I don't know if you have noticed, but right now we currently support USDC-E, bridge version of USDC. And then on DevNet, we released the Dev USDC-E, which is basically the equivalent of USDC-E on the testnet. And then finally, from a developer tooling perspective, we have released an NPM package recently for the facilitator. We haven't released anything for PyP yet. And then we just released the testnet faucet, and potentially we might be releasing a few CLI tools as well. Anything that will make your life easier to develop, depending on demand and need, and we will decide on priorities on how and when to release those. Back to the tracks. So there's 4 tracks that I will be showing you. The first one, as I mentioned before, is on the main track is on x402 applications. On the application side of things, we could be looking, and this is not the set out requirement or rule, so you don't have to focus on these. These are just some of the ideas that have come up, but it is up to you to establish whether those are an actual use case that's worth pursuing, or whether you have found another use case that might not be part of this list, but might still be relevant. This is really just a guide for you for anyone that hasn't come up with an idea yet, to get inspired. So things like automated salary payouts, things like streaming payments, merchant settlement, automated treasury operations, things like on-chain subscription models. I think there's a few ideas that have been released recently on the Solana hackathon that are quite interesting. So feel free to have a look at those as well. AI-assisted trading operations, that is a little bit more complex, but still worth exploring. And things like event-triggered transfers. So these are some of the bullet points that we have for the main track. Then track number 2 is all about agentic finance and payment automation. So here, we could look at things like, conditional multi-party transactions, cross-account orchestrations, from wallet to exchange to wallet, programmed UCCE recurring disbursements or escrow like workflows that could be managed by AI or systems, and then things like chain-based finance with potentially AI-driven compliance rules. That's another example. And then the third track, Crypto.com and Cronos integrations. Here we'd be looking at using a Crypto.com user network to initiate secure agentic actions. Explore the possibility of using Crypto.com Pay style workflows, also via the Kronos chain, and potentially see if there's opportunities on bridging assets, Crow to UCCE and so on and so forth, but also the possibility to extend the wallet integration for automation implementations. And finally, track 4 is on dev and tooling and data visualization. So I think this is also very interesting because being relatively new and opening a lot of opportunities in the realm of SDKs. I think a few suggestions have come up already on how we could potentially extend our facilitator, how we could extend our assets. So I think that's where the track 4 comes in. Anything from SDKs, util libraries, potentially even additional facilitators, as long as it makes sense. I don't think we will say no to new facilitators as long as they bring benefit and opportunities to the ecosystem. But we also welcome extensions of the existing facilitators. So anything that helps grow the ecosystem is welcomed here. And any other tools that you might think of that could be extending existing libraries or the creation of new utils that might make sense. So that's what the 4th track is all about. And again, I mention it once more. This does not mean that you will have to build following those points. These are just guides, and their purpose is to inspire, teams that haven't come up with an idea yet, and help developers to follow a track as opposed to, enforcing you to build on those tracks. So yeah, let's move on. Yeah, so resource-wise, you have seen this probably already in our documentation, and you know that the networks are testnet and mainnet, and the respective chain ID for the EM chain is 338 and 25, respectively for testnet and for mainnet. Then you see the RPC URL, which is our public RPC URL. But if you want to create your own RPC node or use some of the commercial providers, you can do so as well. And then the contracts that you will have to remember. I mean, you don't have to remember them, but you will notice that these are the official contracts. So whenever you use anything that requires the contract, you can refer to our table, and this table is also available in our documentation. So this is basically a copy paste from what we have in our documentation. And finally, the facilitator endpoint is HTTPS and then facilitator.chronoslabs.org version 2 x402. That's basically the base endpoint, then the initial path, and yeah. So again, the facilitator endpoint is shared for both mainnet and testnet. we have been thinking on whether we should create a sandbox endpoint for testnet and have two different endpoints, one for mainnet and one for testnet. It's something that is currently in our to-do list, and depending on demand and suggestions, we might do it or not. But so far, I think we have been able to manage both networks within the same endpoint. And yeah, so UCCE must be used for the payments. An example, if you want to use our facilitator. And testnet funds are now available via a new faucet that we just launched this week. So, I mean, we have been able to send you some of the testnet UCCE via the Telegram group, but I think having a dedicated faucet will just make it much more straightforward and easier. Next one is our builder tools. So I think here, if you look at these are not exclusive, and there might be a few other tools out there that you might find in our documentation. But I think as an initial starting point, things to remember is our faucet. So faucet.cronos.org/USDC, our Explorer, and then the example apps and tutorials repository, which is now public. Here we will be adding new example apps and tutorials as we build them, with one initial example, which I will demo in a bit, already released. And then some of the SDK and libraries that are currently available. So the facilitator client, as well as the developer platform client. So for the developer platform client, if you were to build something using the Cronos chain implementation, you can actually implement Cronos chain interaction with just a few lines of code using the developer platform client. However, to use the developer platform client, you will have to sign up the developer platform, create an account, sign in, and then generate an API key, which is free. And then when you initialize the client, you just have to pass your API key, and you can connect with the Cronos chain literally with just one or two lines of code. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the x402 facilitator. So basically, right now, the facilitator is the backbone for creating and verifying and settling payment workflows. So the capabilities include, but are not limited to, creating x402 workflows, registering agents and potential triggers, query transaction states, simulate flows, submit transaction to Cronos EVM, and so much more. So these are just a few examples of the capabilities. The reference is, as I mentioned before, facility.cronoslabs.org. That's the base endpoint. We will be releasing an endpoint, like a Swagger-like page with each of the endpoints. That's actually on the roadmap. I don't know if it's going to be released this year or early next year, but we are on track on releasing it. So keep an eye open on our releases, and we will also post about it. But yeah, more to come. From an implementation perspective, so the way you can, if you haven't seen this yet, there's actually typos here. So that's not to install it. You don't install the developer platform client, but you install the Crypto.com facilitator SDK. And so the way this works is you literally just install the package, and then you can initialize the facilitator by passing the network that you want to use. and then the rest is being managed by the SDK. So it should be just sufficient to choose, either Cronos testnet or Cronos mainnet. And we made it very easy for you to just use the enums, so you don't have to manually type the string. You can just import the enum for the relevant network and get started. So again, you can explore the npm package, and then I think it's straightforward and self-explanatory. All right, I think that's about it. I think we have now a quick demo overview. So I want to spend some time and do a live walkthrough. What I want to show you is, how you can get testnet UCC from the faucet, how you can connect to Cronos to the Cronos testnet RPC, creating, the x402 workflow via the SDK. Then trigger an API call, execute the payment, and then you can write a transaction on the Testnet Explorer. Okay, let me quickly go into the code. So first of all, let me show you the repository. Maybe I'm going to zoom in a little bit so it's a little bit clearer. So you can access this workflow by following the link here above, github.com/Cronos-labs/x402-examples. So in here you will see that there's a paywall, and in here you will have, the two. It's a mono repository, so you have your front end app and your service, and an explanation of how to get started. So the first thing that we want to do is, so now that we have the faucet, we can essentially send some Crow tokens to us. Let's say I want to send some dev UCC to myself. I can just come here and mint it. Okay, so there seems to be an internal server error right now. We will look into it. So we just released the faucet yesterday. It could be that there's an issue with the server. But what would happen here is that you will essentially just get the faucet amount sent to your wallet. All right, then the next thing, let's do an end-to-end flow. So that's running locally. So whenever, so that's basically a paywalled resource that I want to access. So in order to access, I will first click in here. So what happens in the back is there is a 402 error. As you can see, payment required, and then that triggers the request once more, and then the backend manages the payment flow. And so what I receive is a payment ID, and I could potentially extend it by also returning the transaction ID, and then I can check it on the Explorer. If we go into the code, let me start maybe with the backend piece first. So the backend is pretty self-explanatory. So we run it on an Express Node.js. We register our routes. So we currently just have, our resource API route that we're using. If you have a look at what's happening here, so there's two endpoints. We have the protected endpoint that will require a successful payment before access, and that's done via the facilitator. And then we have the settlement endpoint, which is used to verify and settle the x402 payment. So if we go and have a look at the controller, so before actually getting to the controller, we have a few utils in here. So we have the required payment access util. So basically what this does is it's like a middleware that enforces the x402 payment for the specific resource. And as you can see, we are enforcing here a specific schema, and that is because we try to be agnostic with all the other x402 resource implementations, so that we can allow, in the future, if agent want to use multi-chain interactions, I think it's going to be really important that we enforce the same schema that is being used across different chains. So if we have a look at the actual controllers, we have two asynchronous functions in here, two handlers really. One is get secret or get the data, and the other one is the pay handler. So if we look at every asynchronous function, every handler has its own service integration. So if we move into the actual resource service, this is where the actual business logic lives in. So you saw that the end response, this is hard coded. It returns okay, true, and then response paid content unlocked. But in a real world implementation, you would have, or the resource or the merchant would implement here the actual logic that returns the data. So this could be an LLM call, that is locked behind the paywall. It could be research data set and whatnot. Gated content. It could be anything. So this is something that can be managed. I mean, every developer will probably follow its own implementation, but generally speaking, you move the business logic into your service logic. And so, yeah, then the second one is our settle payment function. And here we basically take care of the handle payment requirement. And this is where the facilitator is being implemented. So here we call here that's the logic that takes care of verifying the payment, and secondly settling the payment. And then if the request succeeds, we then return okay, true, and then the transaction hash as well. So you can see that what we do here is we actually use the facilitator npm package, and then essentially this is how you can, instead of having to implement it yourself, the whole flow, you can just use a few lines of code for verifying and settling the payments. So that will definitely take away a little bit of the headache. We have utils for payment header, we have utils for payment requirements, and then the rest is pretty much self-explanatory. And yeah, I think that is it in a nutshell. This is how the facilitator is being used in the example application. If you want to quickly have a look at the the library for the facilitator. So in our node module, so where do we have it installed? Critical.com. So we have obviously our facilitator class. Here we set all the relevant configurational setups, and that's why you only have to provide the network, and the rest is being taken care of in the library. The different endpoints get supported, verify payment, and then settle payment. But also some utils that we have created so that you don't have to build them yourself. The generate payment requirement util, and also the payment header util. And yeah, I mean, I know this seems like a lot, but I think we have created a lot of documentation around it. So whenever you start implementing it, you will find information. You will have JS docs to explain what is what and what it's not. And so yeah, I hope this is helpful. Again, this is just the first implementation example. We are still releasing more stuff as we speak. I know we are just heading towards festivity territory, so things might slow down a little bit, but we'll never stop working. So I will always make sure that we release as much as possible. And before stopping sharing my screen, I want to quickly show you, if you go into the npm settings, or if you search for crypto.com/facilitator, that is where you will find the npm package for the facilitator. But we also have an AI agent SDK and a developer platform client that might be relatively helpful. So feel free to check them out and see if these are of any benefit. Some of you might be using their own AI systems, but if you don't, and if you want to get started quickly, you can have a look at our AI agent client, which is basically a long chain, long graph wrapper that is built to work well with our developer platform client. And yeah, with that, I'm gonna quickly go back into the slides. Before getting into Q&A, just a few things, upcoming tools and releases. Right now, we have the USDC testnet faucet, which was released literally yesterday or the day before. We are still working on testing it and making sure that it works as intended. But I think this is gonna make your life much easier to get started and get the testnet USDC. Tutorials and apps examples. I think it's always good to have some examples because they will help you get started quickly and explore your concepts a little bit faster. So we will be working on new tutorials and new app examples and release them as soon as we can. And then we will continue extending our libraries and our resources. So we are working on a few ideas right now. And again, if you have, or let's put it differently, if there's demand for other frameworks like Python or whatnot, we'll definitely be able to build it out for you very quickly. It really comes down to demand. If there's no demand for it, then we probably will deprioritize it. But if there's a strong demand for it, then you'll be able to spend some time and release some additional resources on it. Okay, with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we can take it into Q&A territory.
Yeah, Great. Thanks so much, Rick. Super interesting. I'm not the most technically advanced guy, but this was super interesting, I think. Well, crazy enough, but also not unexpected for the Crow fam because they're all big brain people, right? I haven't seen any questions pop up in the chat yet. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, right now is the time. In the meantime, Rick, if someone wants to find any of these resources or want to get involved with the hackathon or start developing basically on Cronos, what's kind of the best place to start in your opinion?
Yeah. So first things first, we will be sharing the resources in the Telegram group.
Yeah.
But we will make sure, as we build and release, we are currently working on consolidating the documentation. So usually the documentation is the single source of truth, but when things move as fast as they do, sometimes you can miss a thing or two. So it's always wise to have a look at our Telegram group, because we will be posting, as we release stuff, we will be posting it in there, and I think we will be pin any relevant resources as well. So I think that's a starting point. Other than that, I think single source of truth is always the documentation. In the documentation, you will usually find the most up to date. Let's put it differently: the most official information.
Okay.
And then it will be updated with the most up. If you release things as quick as we do, sometimes you miss a thing or two in the documentation. The documentation team
Sure.
might take a little bit longer to add it. One example is the USDX, USDCE example. A month ago, we released USDX, and then we decided to use USDCE in favor. And so the documentation still had some references to USDX, and that generated some confusion with the builders. So that's one of the examples. We are actually going to update the documentation, I think, this week, and make sure that everything is as up to date as it can be.
It's an early Christmas present for everyone. Yeah, I still don't see any questions here at the moment. But if I heard you mention correctly, Rick, during the introduction, you kind of mentioned faucets a little bit. Can you expand a bit on that? You seemed quite happy about that. That made life a lot easier for developers. Can you kind of quickly touch on that subject? Like why?
Yeah, of course.
And yeah.
Sure. I mean, right. Previously, in order to get started, I think we all want to use testnet coins and not mainnet ones, because you can get them for free. What happened previously is you had to request them in the channels, and someone from the team would then mint them for you. But that really depends on the availability of team members. What happens when you want to build on a weekend, because why not? So and nobody is available. I think that's where a faucet comes in, because it takes away the manual touch of having to send USDCE testnet coins, tokens, to whoever needs them. And anyone can connect to it. It's a public URL. It's like any other faucet, really. So I think most of us know what the faucet is and how it works. So I think the benefit is just that you don't depend on having to ask us in Telegram to get the tokens, but you can do so via the faucet anytime.
Yeah, it speeds things up significantly, I can imagine, for builders. All right, great. I think we're also coming up at the end, like 59 minutes, or right on the dot here, Rick. Is there anything else you'd like to mention before we wrap things up here today?
Well, yeah, I think keep in mind what I mentioned today. We have a track that we have established. You don't have to build on it. It's just a guide for you to get inspired. If you come up with your own ideas, if you come up with a pain, if you have identified a pain that's actually worth solving, we really value that as well. So we are very flexible, and when we will look at the submissions, we will not look and say, okay, did they follow the track, or did they do their own thing? We will actually try to identify what problem did they try to solve, and how significant is the problem. And so, yeah, that's the only other thing that I want to mention.
All right, great. That's a great way to end things. Yeah, I think we've talked about quite a lot today. So thank you all for tuning in. Right. Also, thanks for all the support with the reposts and the comments on X as well. That's always appreciated. As we've mentioned, we will drop all the links and resources after this workshop as well. Like I said, there's going to be like a YouTube recap if you want to rewatch this as well. If you want to join the Hackathon Telegram channel or the Builder channel, that will be dropped as well. Now, the next part of the workshops for the Hackathon in early 2026, so early January, we'll be talking about agentic payments with Crypto.com's AI agent SDK. I don't know, is that going to be handled by Rick as well, or one of the colleagues? Yeah, Rick as well. Great. Back to back, Rick. It's the best way to start your year, guys. So also thank you, Rick, as well, for the session, for the prep, for the insights. It's been really great. If you haven't already, give him a follow on X as well. I think that wraps things up for today. Once again, thank you for tuning in. And happy Crowley days, everyone. And we're going to end it here. See you all at the next workshop. Thank you. See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye.